And so we're doing a series. Just every week we're going to be talking about one of these letters. Last week we kicked off the series to the Church of Ephesus. And there's 7 letters that make up the first part of the book of Revelation. And the book can be, if you read the book of Revelation, sometimes you can feel like it can be a bit confusing, but the truth is, it's really meant to be understood by us. These were personal letters. These letters were written in pain. They were written carefully. They were written by John through Jesus, through John. And these letters were written to people who would actually die for each other. And they did. Many people that received these letters were actually martyred and killed for following Jesus. So today we're in Revelation chapter 2, and we're going to start in verse 8. To the angel, or to the messenger, or to the pastor of the church in Smyrna, write, these are the words of him who is the first and the last, who died and who came to life again. I know your suffering and your poverty, yet you are rich. I know your suffering and I know your poverty, yet you are rich. I know about the slander of those who say these are Jews and they are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. Do not be afraid of what you are about to suffer. I tell you, the devil will come and put you in prison to test you. This letter is filled with all sorts of good news. And I tell you, the devil will put some of you in prison to test you, and you will suffer persecution for 10 days. Be faithful, even to the point of death. Be faithful, even to the point of death, and I will give you life as a victor's crown. Each of these 7 letters is to a unique church. In this case, it's the church in Smyrna. We thought Bouctouche was a weird name. Smyrna. And it's not insignificant. But this morning, we're going to do something a little different. Instead of focusing on who this letter is for, we're going to focus, like last week, of who it's from. And all of these letters are kind of a picture of Jesus. And they're painting a picture for us, as we talked about last week, about the brass on his feet and the planets in his hand. And we talked about all that, and you can go back and listen to that online. But it's painting a picture, and at the end of these 7 letters and these 7 weeks, if we take those letters and put them together, it's going to paint us a picture of who really Jesus is. The church in Ephesus has said many things, but it says that he is the one who walks amongst the 7 lampstands. He is the one who walks among the churches, that he is personal, that he is not far away, that he is walking amongst us. And we felt that today. Verse 8 says this, to the angel of the church in Smyrna write, these are the words of him who is the first and the last, who died and came to life. I mean, some translations say, this one says the first and the last, and a lot of translations say the Alpha and the Omega, or the beginning and the end, who died and come back to life. I want us to just kind of take a pause here. Life can be really hard. Penny's family, this week lost a 24-year-old cousin who was engaged, who was going to be married this past June. Life is hard. And many of you in this room, you've suffered unimaginable loss, or you've experienced the darkest of dark. Life at times is not fair. And it's not fair because sin came into the world through Adam and Eve. And because of sin, things that we experience are why we experience them. It's not because God is punishing us. It's not because of those things. It's because sin is in the world. But often we get caught up in our circumstances. And I get that, because it's hard to not feel sorry for yourself. Trust me, I've been there. When things were dark and things were low, I was having a pity party and the only person invited was me. That's a party nobody wants to go to. But sometimes when we're going through a difficult time, and with this many people in the room, I'm sure there's many people that you're saying, Troy, I'm in a season, and it's really hard and it's really difficult. But sometimes we need to shift our focus. How many know that we can get so focused on our problem, that's all we think about? For the last month, I had something, and that's all I thought about. It was the last thing at night, the first thing in the morning. When I was having lunch, when I was trying to go to sleep, it didn't matter. It was all consuming. And we can get like that. But we need to shift our focus. He says, I am the beginning and the end. I am the Alpha, the Omega. Remember last week how the stars to the Romans would represent the 7 planets. And they looked to those 7 planets because they were all powerful. And they also symbolized the 7 angels of the 7 churches. So he's also the one who died and rose again. What we need to understand this morning is the beginning and the end. The Alpha, the Omega. This is a reference again to Jesus' power. I want you to know something today. When Jesus walked out of the tomb, all bets were off. When Jesus walked out of the tomb, all things were possible. When he walked out of the tomb, he was going to spend his life and eternity calling you and I out of the grave. The power of prayer. The power in prayer is not the words we choose. The power in prayer is the person we pray to. People say, well, I don't know pray because I feel awkward and I don't know what to do. It's not the words you choose, it's the person you pray to. Listen, you can pray to me all day. It will do you no good because I don't have any power. But the person you pray to is what really matters. We touched on this last week during Beyond. Prayer is powerful, not because of the words you say, but because of who we pray to. We pray to the one that is the first and the last. We pray to the one who died and rose again. When we forget who we're praying to, we pray powerless prayers because our prayers can just turn into complaining sessions. And I mean, there's a time for that. There's a whole book in the Bible called Lamentations, and there's a whole bunch of lamenting in the whole book. So there's maybe a time for that, but at some point you've got to change your focus. At some point you've got to stop talking to God about your problems and start talking to your problems about God. That's what Mark Batterson says. You've got to stop just talking to God about your problems, and you've got to talk to your problems about God. You need to start declaring who He is. I serve a God that is in control. He is the Alpha, He is the Omega. He is the beginning, He is the end, and He is everything in between. And He is with me, He is for me. In His mercy, in His grace, and His wisdom. In the Bible, there's actually 400 names of God. And each one reveals a different dimension of who God is. At Christmas we'll read, He's a wonderful counselor, mighty God, Prince of Peace, everlasting Father. Each of these reveals something about Him. Let me encourage you this morning, be careful who you go to counsel for. The best counsel you can get is from the wonderful counselor. He is Father, He is Son, He is Spirit. He is the way, the truth, and the life. The Bible calls Him Jehovah Jireh, my provider. And there's over 400 names. And in this passage it says, you're the first and the last. Other translations, and they're all saying the same, is you are the Alpha and the Omega. I want to be sure that we understand this today. You are the Alpha, the Omega. If we go back into the book of Exodus and we look, the story of Moses. Moses finds himself at a burning bush in the Old Testament. And the bush is burning, but it's not being consumed. And Moses asked God his name. He said, "Who is this? What is your name?" And God gives the most peculiar answer. He says, "I am." I mean, that's a little weird. He's like, "What is your name?" He says, "I am." I mean, it kind of leaves you hanging. I mean, can you imagine walking up to someone and say, "Hey, nice to meet you. What's your name?" He's like, "I am." And you'll be like, "I am weird." You're like, that's what you're probably thinking. But it's just this, "I am." And then you fast forward to the Gospels and the Gospel of John, and Jesus begins to unroll this answer. He says, "I am the bread of life." That I am the one who sustains you every day. Yesterday's bread is stale. Tomorrow's bread is not cooked yet. I am your daily bread. He says, "I am the light of the world." I'm not just the light that guides you. I'm the light that illuminates to show you where you are. And I will put a path and I will make it straight. I am the light of the world. Then he says, "I am the door." Remember in the summer we talked about the shepherd and the door? He says, "I am the vine." He says, "I am the good shepherd. I am the way, the truth, and the life." And then John 11, he says, "I am the resurrection and the life." Then we get to the last book of the Bible, where we are today. John is writing. He says, Jesus writes, "I am the Alpha, the Omega, the first and the last." I need you to hear what God is saying today. Alpha is the first letter in the Greek alphabet. How many knew that? Raise your hand. Good, a few of you. Omega is the last letter in the Greek alphabet. So I am the Alpha, I am the Omega, I am the beginning, I am the end. What God is saying in our words is, I am the A, I am the Z, or the Z. Now the alphabet is not really that complicated. Our daughter Alex knew the alphabet when she was about 1.5 years. And Noah's 15 and he's pretty much got it nailed down. It's just a joke, it's just a joke. I told him I was going to say that. But the alphabet is not complicated. Kids know it when it's really young, when they're really young. If you went to the Bouctouche library today, there's thousands and thousands of books in the library. And every one of those books only uses 26 letters. They all use the alphabet. And yet, every book in there is vastly different from another. From Dr. Seuss to encyclopedias and everything in between. Without the alphabet, none of these books exist. But with the alphabet, there's endless possibilities. Let that sink into your heart. That without the alphabet, the books don't exist. But with the alphabet, the possibilities are endless. I mean, he's establishing his authority. There's a whole bunch of books here, all made up of 26 letters, formed into words, phrases, sentences, paragraphs, pages. And he says, I am the Alpha, I am the Omega, I am the A, I'm the Z, and I'm everything between. and I bring order to it all. And I'm here this morning to help you write your story. Will you allow me to be the author of your story? Jesus would say to you today, whatever you're going through today, worry, Pa. I mean, why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he just be that personal? Yes, it's for the church in Smyrna, but I'm more concerned of who this letter is from. It's from the first and the last. It's from the beginning and the end. And God tells us in his word that he is the same yesterday and today and forever. I need you to know this morning that whatever you're going through, he is the Alpha and the Omega. He's the first, he's the last, he's the beginning, he's the end. And you need to find your peace and your strength in him today. I was having a conversation with a friend. This friend is actually in this room, and I'm not going to reveal the person's name right now because there's an amazing story that's developing that you're going to hear at another time. But this friend lost their job, had started a business, and under no fault of their own, mismanagement by other parties, the business is on the verge of collapse. Lost all of their investment, facing personal bankruptcy, worked for months for free. But all through the journey, they tithed, they honored God. But they're literally at the point of losing everything they own. Life today is like nothing like they expected it to be. And I was having a conversation with them, and they sent me this. Now I want you to hear this in the background of what I just told you. I said to them, it's really amazing to see you be able to go through all of this and still keep God first. And this was the response. Glory to God. If he's not in charge and leading us, we have no hope. But since he is, glory to God. Hope is found. And we give him the pleasure of leading us as a people's or as a person's king does, because nothing else matters. That's the foundation that has never evaporated or gone away from under my feet like everything else has. I never want to live again not having that firm foundation to stand upon and to leap from on my best days, or to lay on and sob on my worst days. That's the peace and the power of God has given me. And I owe Jesus everything for gifting me access to God and for leading me here. I am the Alpha. I am the Omega. I am the beginning and the end. If you have everything or you have nothing, I am with you. Verse 9 says this, I know your suffering and your poverty, yet you are rich. This letter addresses these two things, suffering and poverty. And maybe many of us have faced these at different times. I mean, suffering goes without saying. We all have suffered loss and suffered pain. I mean, last week we talked about the Emperor Domitian, who put Christians at that time into the lion's den to be killed by lions. I mean, there was tremendous suffering in those times. And they were poor. And I'll tell you why the church in Smyrna was poor. They were actually living in a very rich city. There was actually a booming trade system that took place. But the reason they are poor and the reason that Jesus is acknowledging their poverty is because as soon as they surrendered their life to Jesus and became a Christian, nobody would trade with them. They lost everything. So even though the environment around them and the economy around them was booming, as soon as they knew, no, he's the follower of the way, or he's with Jesus, they don't trade. So they became very poor. As soon as they professed their faith, it disqualified them from being part of the trade. In other words, it was like this career suicide, that the moment that you gave your life and you were known as that person that gave their life, it was like you just gave up everything. When they professed their faith in Christ, they were taking a vow of poverty, not because God wanted them to be poor, but it was because in that moment, that's what would happen in the reality. And they were persecuted, and they suffered, and they were poor. And he says, but you are rich. I know people who have everything and they're poor. Because they don't know the Alpha, the Omega. See, this is not about money or possessions. We are the richest when we have Jesus. Dr. Robert Roden wrote this: the world measures success by how much you make and how much people serve you. He said God measures success by how much you give and how much people serve, how much you serve people. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because it's a little bit complicated, but it's something that I saw this week that I want to tell us about. I just wonder if some form or some fashion we've got this wrong. We think that we're here to be served, but God has called us to be servants of His. No matter what the cost would be, even if it was poverty or even if it's something else. There's something in psychology called downward counterfactual. You say, well, what is downward counterfactual? You probably wouldn't know what downward counterfactual is, because I didn't. But simply put, it's comparing your current situation, no matter how bad it is, with something that's worse. So you compare your situation with something that's worse. Upward counterfactual does the exact opposite. It compares your situation with a situation that's better, and it has a depressing effect. So no matter how good your situation is, you're always like, yeah, well, at least I don't have as much as this person. You're always comparing to someone who you think has it better. I mean, has social media done this to us, or what? I think if we're focused on what we want instead of what we have, we're in trouble. And that's what upward and downward counterfactual are all about. It's that we're focused on something we want instead of something we have. If I had this, I'll be happy. If I lived here, I'll be happy. If my house had this, I'd be happy. No, you won't. Because there's this search and this void inside of us that is always searching for something. And I should tell you this morning that it can only be found in the one that is in control. And His name is Jesus. And He's the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end. They did a study about downward and upward counterfactual. And studies show that the bronze medalists are happier than silver medalists. Now, that doesn't even make sense. Because if I went to the Olympics, expected a reaction there. If I went to the Olympics, and I would be happier if I won a silver medal than a bronze medal. Or if you went to a hockey tournament and you won silver instead of bronze, you would be happier. I don't see many people who are like, oh, I won bronze. I'm happy. You always want to. But the study shows that bronze medalists are happier than silver medalists because of downward counterfactual. I mean, it doesn't make sense that silver medalists, it doesn't make sense because the silver medalists beat the bronze medalists. But the study said this: silver medalists focused on how close they came to getting gold, so they were disappointed. Bronze medalists focused on how close they were to not getting a medal. So they were grateful. I think you just need to understand that this is actually more than just some kind of weird mind trick. Philippians 4:8 says this: if anything is good or right or pure or just, think on these things. We cannot control our experience because life is not fair and life is hard. But how we choose to look at things makes a difference. Standing on the promises of God, it changes the way that you live. These letters really are more about knowing who Jesus is and letting Him getting this church ready because He knows some persecution is coming. These letters are about preparation, but prophetically, they're ready, they're preparation for us. Because we can want to bury our head in the sand or not, but persecution is coming. See, it's not about people getting in here. It's about getting Jesus in people. Because when tough times come, and they will, whether poverty or suffering or death or financial ruin, if Christ is in here, we can stand on the fact that He is the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end. Verse 10. Do not be afraid of what you're about to suffer. I tell you, the devil will put you in prison to test you, and you will suffer persecution for 10 days. Be faithful, even to the point of death, and I will give you a victor's crown. It's like, bad times are coming. You're going to go to jail. But don't give up. Because at the end, there's a reward for you. 10 days is, when I read this, again, I had never really noticed this before, but when I read the 10 days, I'm like, this seems very specific. Like 10 days. It's a bit of a mysterious reference, but I think that what we need to understand is, it's not, it doesn't really mean that they'll be in jail for 10 days. It's a number, it's like a number of completion in Scripture. It means that there's going to be a season of time. There's going to be a completion of time that this suffering in this jail is going to happen. And it's this season of suffering, but it will come to full term. So it's just this season. So that's why he puts a number on it, because it's showing that it's going to start and it's going to end. Like this too shall pass. Ecclesiastes 3 says there's a time for laughter, a time for crying. There's a time for building up and a time for tearing down. There's a beautiful thing about this passage in Ecclesiastes. It says God makes everything beautiful in His time. We know that we have 4 seasons here in Canada, which is debatable, but we're supposed to have 4 seasons. Summer, fall, winter, spring. And we go through all the seasons, so we're into fall now. But the truth is that's kind of what he's getting at. There's going to be a season, and he says there's this completion. It's going to start and it's going to end. What I think that we need to understand today is that everybody in this room goes through seasons, different times. It could be a season of growth. It could be a season of loss. It could be a season of pain. It could be a season of disappointment. I have this log. Well, it's not really a log. I guess it would have to be longer to be a log. I guess it's just a short log. Anyways, we're not here to discuss that. Let's move on. Okay? So that's how my mind works. I'm like, oh, is this a log? Is this a slab? What is this? It's like a very short log. So, we have this log. And if I took my time, I could go through this, and I could count every ring. And it would tell me how old the tree is. And some of the growth are really big. Some of them are really small. Some of them you can barely tell that any growth happened. Sometimes you can tell where there was damage done in a certain season. And God telling us, Jesus is telling us that you're going to go through seasons. And you've got to know what season you're in. Because how you act in that season is really, really important. It shows way at the beginning of this tree that that's when it grew the most. Doesn't that sound like us? And then as it became harder and things became crowded and more difficult, the lines got closer and closer together. But then right here, for some reason, there was this big season of growth. But the tree kept growing through the seasons. See, I don't know what season you're in. But I should probably tell you that He is the Alpha, the Omega. He is the beginning and the end. He holds the planets. And He still cares about you in your season of poverty or suffering. What does He ask about the church in Smyrna? He says, be faithful in this season. Even to the point of death. He says, be faithful. Even to the point of death. Those words are very prophetic. Because many people in the early church paid with their life. The question I have for us today as individuals is this. What have you sacrificed in your relationship with Jesus? I think if we're really honest, we follow Jesus right up to the point of it costing us something. And then we stop. And we say, this season is too hard. And He says, I am the Alpha. I am the Omega. I am in every phrase, every sentence, every paragraph, every page, in every book. With me, the possibilities for your life are endless. Through the pain and the suffering, you put yourself in my hands. Even unto death. And I will take care of you. We'll often say, I know I can count on you. When you say, Jesus, I'll live for you no matter what the costs. But when the season gets tough, we don't go to church. We stop giving. We stop serving. We stop volunteering. I am the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. I am A to Z. It doesn't matter what your struggle is today. You need to know that He is here. I was driving in my car this weekend, and Penny was away and is away, and it was I forget Friday night. I was here, and I was like, what am I going to do for supper? It's just terrible. And then Bianca and Joel called me and said, you want to come for supper? I'm like, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. And then yesterday, I was like, what am I going to do for supper? And Natasha called. She's like, well, you want to come for supper? I'm like, speak, Lord. Anyways, Penny's gone till Wednesday, but I'm just saying. Anyway, that's not important detail. I'm just saying that, just put that out there. It has nothing to do with this, but I'm just saying she's gone till Wednesday, so that's like tonight. Well, I have supper here tonight, so Monday, Tuesday. Anyways, that's not important. But as I was driving around, wondering what I was going to have for supper, this message was going through my heart and my mind. And it was like, I'm the Alpha and the Omega, I'm the beginning and the end. I'm the A to Z, I'm the alphabet. And I started to, in my mind, I don't know what it was the craziest thing, but I started to go through my mind, through the alphabet. Thinking about things that started with each letter of the alphabet. I need you to know this morning that if you're here and your struggle is addiction, He is the Alpha, the Omega. If you're here and your fight is battling depression, or cancer, or doubt, or envy, or your faith is low, He is the Alpha, the Omega. If you are here and you are godless, meaning without God, He is still for you. While you were still sinners, Christ died for you. If you're here and you are holding a grudge, or injustice has been done to you, or jealousy is in your heart, or your kids are driving you crazy. If you feel lonely, or money problems have got you down, or you've got no friends, or you feel like you have no friends. If you're oppressed or being attacked by the enemy, or you're feeling pressed by every side. If you feel like quitting on God, or have a relationship that is broken. If you are stuck in your faith, or tired and worn out. If you have unrepentant sin in your life, you need to know He is still the Alpha and the Omega. If you are on the verge of divorce, or you've got worry in your heart, or if you're extra stressed about work, or if you're yoked to the wrong things, I need you to know that there is absolutely zero chance that He will stop pursuing you.
Yay!
In closing today, He is the Alpha, the Omega. He is the beginning and the end. He is A, He is Z. Whatever you are facing right now. You say, Troy, what do I do in this season where I feel dry and I feel thirsty? We all go through those seasons. Don't beat yourself up. But there's only one solution. And that solution is you've got to seek after God. So the solution when things aren't going well is to seek after God. You say, Troy, things are going really great. I'm in a season of growth. Things are awesome. What do I do? Keep seeking God. The moment you take your foot off the gas, you're going to start going backwards. And then the season is going to get tough. No matter what your season is, the solution is the same thing. The solution is to stand on who He is. He is the Alpha, He is the Omega. He is the beginning and the end. And you need to pursue Him. Pursue His Word. Pursue His grace. Pursue His mercy. Pursue His love for you. You say, why? Because God is the only one who can rescue you. Even if you got yourself into this mess all on your own, or whether it was no fault of your own, God is the only one who can rescue you. So this morning I asked Denise to sing this song. It'll probably be new to most of you, but it's called Rescue. And I want you to know that God is here in this place. He's the Alpha, the Omega. And I would encourage you, as we're going to just close in a time of worship together, a couple of songs. Why don't you say, Troy, no matter what this season is, if I feel like it's time of poverty or suffering or whatever it is, that I'm going to seek after the Alpha and the Omega. Why don't you start that today? So why don't we stand? And why don't you just close your eyes? And if you would like to read the words, they will be on the screen. But just begin to just listen. And just reach out to Him. God, I need you to rescue me. I'm counting on your promises. I'm counting on the Alpha, the Omega, and everything in between.